Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I am sharing my recipe for stewed fish. Now you guys have been requesting this for a while and you wanted to see how my family puts this amazing dish together. So in today's video, I'm going to share my very quick and simple version. Now, usually I would use bone-in fish for this. Sadly, I do not have access to that right now, being that we are in this pandemic. So I'm making do with what I have and I'm using boneless fillets. If you have the bone-in fish, feel free to use that. I prefer the one with the bone, but I wanted to get this recipe out for you guys. So I decided, let me just use the boneless fillets. So whatever way you do it, I promise if you follow these same measurements, ingredients, and process, you will get the perfect tasting stewed fish. Now, this is something that my grandmother made for us growing up. This was usually a breakfast item that she would make alongside fried bake. And honestly, just anything to sop up that beautiful, tasty gravy goes well with this. So I hope you guys enjoy my method for this. Remember, everybody cooks differently. So if you want to leave the way that your family makes their stewed fish in the comments down below, feel free to do so as well. Now before I make the actual stew, we have to make a little fresh seasoning blend to go ahead and put on the fish before we fry and to put in the actual stew. So I have some crushed garlic, some crushed hot pepper, which is scotch bonnet peppers. I have a pimento pepper, some green seasoning, as well as some wiri peppers. Now all of the crushed ingredients like the pepper, the garlic, and the green seasoning, those are things that I had crushed and I left it in the freezer just for easy access when I go to cook. And the wiri peppers, I'm adding that in addition to my crushed scotch bonnet pepper just because I wanted to add both in. You could use one or the other and you can also omit it if you do not like spicy food. So basically all I'm doing is I'm adding everything into my mortar and pestle and I am going to pound them up really well. Now if you wanted to, you could go ahead and put this in your food processor, but a little word of advice, if you're putting it in the food processor, do not add any water, because if you add water, what's going to happen is when you coat the fish with this and then you go to fry it, it will have a lot of excess water on it and then it'll cause the oil to pitch up even more, which is actually very dangerous. I've got all of my fresh seasonings blended up really well in my mortar and pestle. As you guys can see, it is nice and thick, no extra water was added. And by the way, if you guys wanted to see how I make my homemade green seasoning, I'll leave the recipe linked right up here in the right hand corner so you can check that out. So now what we're going to do is start working on the fish and seasoning it to start making this stewed fish. So once your fresh seasoning is all blended up, it's time to work on the actual fish for the stewed fish. So in my bowl, I have some cod fillets. Again, these are boneless and skinless, but by all means, if you have bone-in fish, feel free to use that as well. And once you go ahead and wash it and dry it off really well, you are going to go in with some salt and pepper to taste. And after you go in with your salt and pepper, you're going to add in about half of that fresh seasoning that we blended up. The reason why we're only adding in half is because we're going to use that other half to go ahead and add into our stew later on. So what I'm going to do is basically go in with my fingers and massage the seasonings into the fish really well. This is going to ensure that the fish has enough flavor before we go to fry it before adding it into the stew. Now I will mention, if you are using boneless fish to make your stewed fish like I am today, make sure you use a very nice thick and meaty fish such as the codfish. The reason I say that is because when you add it into the stew, it may fall apart if it is too delicate of a fish. That's why usually when people have it with the bones in, it is more sturdy and it won't really fall apart. So I stirred up my fish really well with all of those fresh seasonings and it is ready to fry. I'm not leaving it to marinate at all because all of those flavors are already there on the fish and they'll soak in even more as we cook. So in a bowl here, I have some all-purpose flour. I went in with some salt and some black pepper to taste and I'm mixing that up. This is what we're going to use as the coating to go ahead and fry the fish. So I have my seasoned flour here and I also have my seasoned fish off to the side there. Basically, all I'm going to keep on doing is putting each piece of fish in the flour and pressing it down really well to get it properly coated. You want to make sure all parts of the fish are coated so this way you have an even coating and it also ensures that the fish does not fall apart in the stew when you have the coating on it. Now, a little piece of advice as well. If you wanted this coating to be extra crispy, like if you were just making a plain fried fish, you could add in some cornstarch and that will leave it very crispy. The reason why I didn't add it in here today was just because I am putting it into the stew so the skin or the coating will get a little soggy anyway, so there's no need for the cornstarch. Once you finish coating all of your fish in the seasoned flour mixer, you are ready to fry. So make sure you have a pan heating up on a medium to medium high heat, and you're going to heat up some vegetable or canola oil or any other type of light tasting oil in it until it is nice and hot and ready for that fish to go in. I do not recommend using a high quality olive oil or high quality coconut oils or anything like that to fry this, because they tend to get acrid and get a bitter taste when you heat them up too much. So my oil is nice and hot at this point. As you guys can see, there's a lot of little ripples on the surface. That is an indication that your oil is perfectly hot. So I'm going in with my pieces of fish. I'm probably going to do about 2 batches here, just because I do have quite a lot of fish. And another word of advice for all of you guys, if you wanted your fish pieces to be even bigger than this, feel free to leave them bigger. If you wanted them smaller, you can also make them smaller. Just be mindful that when you're adding it into the stew, it is hard to turn around, so I just wanted to have it in manageable pieces. After I added my fish into the pan with the hot oil, I allowed it to sit there for about 2 minutes on one side. And as you guys can see, I'm starting to flip them over now, and the other side has crisped up really well and has a little bit of a golden brown color. Now I will flip them over a few times while they are in the oil. I just want to go ahead and seal up both sides in the oil first before I allow it to get totally nice and brown. So I'm going to continue cooking them on the next side until the fish is for the most part cooked. So here's my fish frying up. It's getting nice and golden brown. It is almost ready to take out. I just want these sides to get a little bit darker. So you just want to go ahead and keep flipping the fish until you get the desired color you want. At this stage, you do not have to fully cook the fish. I would say you only need to cook it about 75% because it will finish cooking and soaking up the flavors of the stew later on. Now once your fish has been cooking for about 5 to 6 minutes or less if you cut them smaller, or more time if you cut them bigger, then you can go ahead and remove them from the oil. Just make sure that your oil is not too hot, or else the fish will just burn on the outside and it will not even begin to cook on the inside. So I'm laying it on a plate with some paper towels that I've lined it with, and I'm going to set it aside while I fry my other batch of fish. Once you're done frying your other batch of fish, catch me in the next screen and I'll show you guys what to do next. Now putting a good stew fish together is actually very simple. So I'm going to show you guys how to do this step by step. It's going to take absolutely no time. The longest part of this dish is actually marinating the fish and getting it into that hot oil to fry. Other than that, it comes together in no time. So in a heavy bottom pot, I'm going in with a good amount of olive oil. You could use whatever type of oil or fat of your choice. And I'm going to go in with some sliced onions. I'm basically going to stir these onions up just a little bit for maybe about 1 to 2 minutes until they start to soften up a bit. After a while, you're going to see that your onions start to soften up really well. It's only been about 1 minute to 1.5 minutes. And at this point, I'm going to go in with my sliced tomatoes. Now, I have some plum tomatoes that I had in the freezer, and I also have some cherry tomatoes from my garden. I chopped all of those up and I put them into the pot. A word of advice for you guys: if you have tomatoes from the grocery store, go ahead and chop them or freeze them whole, because when you add them into stews like this, they really melt nice and they make for a very nice sauce. So as you guys can see here, my tomatoes melted really well. They took about 4 to 5 minutes to melt, and as you guys can see, it's already creating a really nice sauce. We just need to reduce it down a bit. But at this point, I'm going to go in with the rest of my green seasoning that I had sitting in my mortar and pestle. Basically what I'm going to do now is cook this for about 3 to 4 minutes until it starts to reduce a little bit. After about 3 minutes, you're going to see that it starts to reduce a little bit and it's cooking down really well. At this point, I'm going to go in with some tomato paste. Now, in my opinion, the tomato paste is vital because it gives that really rich tomato flavor, and it also makes the stew taste like it's been cooking for hours because it gives that really rich flavor. Also, I recommend adding it in because it helps thicken up the stew a little bit as well. So once you add in that tomato paste, you're also going to go in with some cut scallions. I'm only adding half of my scallions right now. I will add the rest later once the stew is done cooking. Basically, I'm going to stir this around a little more, let it cook for maybe 1 to 2 more minutes, and then I'll show you what to do next. Now, once you see that this mixture reduces down really well, you see all of the oil coming out of the mixture, and you also see that it starts to stick a little bit at the bottom. You know that this mixture is cooked properly. You have to make sure you cook the tomatoes properly along with the tomato paste, so this way you get the optimal flavor out of it. If you just toss everything in and keep on going about your business with the stew, then what's going to happen is it's not going to have a nice deep flavor to it. Now once you get to this stage and the oil is separating and it is starting to catch at the bottom a bit, you're going to go in with some brown sugar as well as some salt. After going in with that brown sugar and the salt, you're also going to go in with some hot water. You want to go in with hot water to start creating that gravy. And I'll tell you exactly how much I'm using in the description box below, so make sure you check it out for all of the proper ingredients and measurements. So once you've added in that hot water and you've stirred everything up really well, you're going to go in with the rest of your green onions or your scallions. And once you add those in and stir it up a bit, you're going to put the cover on and you're going to allow this to simmer on a medium to medium low heat for about 10 to 15 minutes, so this way this can cook down and all of the flavors can condense really well. So it's been about 15 minutes, and as you guys can see, the oil from this mixture has risen to the top. That's one indication that it's cooked properly, and the other indication is that it starts to thicken up really well. So at this point, go ahead and give it a taste. If you feel that you need to add in some more salt, add it in, and if you feel that you need to add in more sugar to balance out the acidity with the tomato, add it in at this point as well. And once you taste this mixture and you are happy with the taste, you're going to go in with all of your fried fish. The reason why I said to taste it before adding it in your fish is because after you add in the fish, you really don't want to be adding ingredients and tossing it up too much. The reason being is because after you add in the fish, it's going to start soaking up all of that gravy and it actually gets very, very delicate. So if you turn it up too much, the fish will start to break apart, the coating is going to come off, and it actually can become very messy and not too appetizing looking. So I'm basically going to nestle all of the fish in there. I'm going to cover this pot, leave it on a low heat, and I'm going to simmer it for about 5 to 10 minutes, or basically until the fish is perfectly done cooking. So it's been exactly 8 minutes at this point since I had my fish steaming in that broth or the gravy that we made for the stew, and it is done cooking. When you open the lid, you're going to see that the fish plumps up a little bit just because it started to soak up all of that gravy. So I'm going on with some extra scallions that I just chopped up, just so it can have some extra flavor. And it is ready to serve, and it looks super, super delicious. So as per our family tradition, I am serving this stew up with some fried bakes. Now this is something my grandmother always made for us growing up, and honestly this is like a comfort breakfast food for me. However, if this is not being eaten for breakfast, I'm making it for dinner. You can make it for whatever time of day you want. And you can also serve it with anything. It goes great with roti, it goes great with tennis rolls, and it also goes great with rice even. I am done. I'm ready to sit down and chow down on this amazing stewed fish and my fried bake. So if you enjoyed this recipe today, please go ahead and give this video a thumbs up. For all of you guys who have been requesting this recipe, and for anyone who's new to my channel, if you are new and you have not subscribed yet, make sure to subscribe, hit that red subscribe button, and hit the bell notification icon right next to it, and you'll be notified every time I post my newest videos. And of course, as usual, you know I love hearing from each and every one of you. Make sure to leave your comments down below. Let me know what you guys would like me to make next. And of course, let me know what you thought of this amazing stewed fish recipe. I'll see you guys again very soon.